You know, I think by nature, older people are drawn to politics because they have more time in some ways. Young people are so busy going to school, getting a job, dating, starting a family. They don't have time for politics. Plus, when you're a little bit older, in some ways, you have more of a stake in things. You have property, you have a job, you pay taxes. And so the knock on politics and political parties is that their members are typically older, middle-aged or seniors, but I think that's just a natural thing. In fact, sometimes it's odd if young people get too involved, but I was involved as a teenager, and I know why, because there are some people who from a very early age feel a sense of mission, of idealism, and they see that that is a way to change the world. So there is an important place for young people in politics. I know that because I was one of them. Well, I'm here with probably one of the youngest delegates at the conference here. Josh Alexander, how old are you, lad?
16.
16. So I'm almost 4 times your age. I'm triple your age. But you've been in the news. In fact, we've covered your story a little bit. For our viewers who might not recognize us, why don't you give us a 1-minute summary of the shenanigans and the battle you're in?
Yeah, sure. So I had been going to a high school in Renfrew. Not long.
That's in Ontario?
Yeah, Renfrew, Ontario. And not long into my time there, some female students informed me that males were using the female washrooms. They were concerned about this, and they had known I had had a history in activism during the Freedom Convoy, where I organized the student walkouts against mandates. So I decided to speak up in the Catholic board there, and
how did you do that?
Well, I went to my principals and spoke. It came up in classroom debates.
And how did the principals receive you?
They didn't. Well, eventually, after about 2 or 3 talks, they said they were no longer going to continue to discuss the matter with me.
So they obviously knew about this and supported it.
Oh yeah, they were well aware of it, and they actually said that trans-identifying students are the gender they identify as, rather than their biological gender. So yeah, the faculties and
this is a Catholic school.
Yeah.
All right, keep going.
Yeah. So, anyways, I was in a class debate. This topic came up. And I said there's only 2 genders, and
And what was the class? What subject?
There was a couple different classes. The main ones were law and math class, but
well, math, sure, the number 2.
Yeah. So I said there's only 2 genders, and there was transgender students in this class.
What grade is this? Grade 11?
Grade 11, yeah. Mind you, this is a math class, so it shouldn't be on this topic in the first place. But the teacher was allowing it to stray, and students were asking me questions, and I answered them because it had been quite a controversial topic. And then the teacher in 2 different classes went on to endorse and support male breastfeeding. Yeah, so
I got nothing.
Yeah, so I ended up calling that pedophilia, and I had to graphically describe in front of the class what exactly the male teacher was endorsing, and.
All right, so I get the feeling that this Catholic school ain't like Catholic schools when I was growing up. But so what came about? How did the story end? It sounds like it's one thing for you to spar with your classmates, but sparring with teachers and administration that typically doesn't go well for a student.
Yeah, no, it didn't. Long story short, I got multiple suspensions, exclusions, and at this point, I've been kicked out for the year.
And what did your parents think about all this? Whose side were they on? Did they say, "Hush now, young one, just get through school," or did they stand with you?
Well, no, my parents taught me how to think and not what to think, right? So they were supportive when I exercised my critical thinking.
Well, what do they think about the fact you're suspended from school?
They weren't happy with the administration, but they were even more discouraged when they saw me get arrested at my high school. But,
and were you charged with anything?
I was given a trespassing charge, but other than that, no.
And has that gone to court yet?
It will be going to court. We're also taking the court to taking the school to the Human Rights Tribunal.
Do you have a lawyer for either of those matters, the trespass matter or the human rights matter?
Yeah, I've got James Kitchen from Liberty Coalition Canada.
And is that being crowdfunded, or how's that being? Is the Democracy Fund helping with that, or is James taking care of that? How's that going?
Yeah, so it's there's a fundraiser at libertycoalitioncanada.com. And there's a petition there you can sign for me as well.
I know, James, he does some good civil liberties work. So it sounds like, that was my first question, because a young lad fighting in class is one thing, but if you're fighting in court, you do need a lawyer. Sounds like that's covered. So you're taking the Human Rights Commission, and what are you pleading? That your freedom of religion is being violated, or what freedom are you saying is violated?
Well, yeah, I would argue that my religious freedom was violated. I actually used scripture. I quoted some scripture and said that there's only two genders, and I backed it with my beliefs in a Catholic school.
And by the way, what's the Pope's view on this? I'm taking it. This is a liberal Pope, but I'm going to guess what you were saying was probably not too far away from what the Pope says.
Well, I myself am not Catholic, so I'm not kind of not in the loop there, but I did get to talk to several priests and a couple bishops, and it was mixed support. Some wouldn't even talk to me, and others were supportive.
So what's the latest?
Well, so I got arrested at the school for refusing to abide by the unlawful exclusion order. And then one day later, actually, it was almost right here, I got arrested again, just one street over there at the National Arts Center for going to the Drag Queen story time, and I used a megaphone to quote some scripture and exercise my religious freedom as well as my freedom of peaceful assembly.
So now, were you on public property?
No, I was on a crosswalk. I was on.
So what were you possibly arrested for?
They said they were going to arrest me for disturbance, and then they eventually arrested me and charged me with trespassing.
On a crosswalk?
On a crosswalk.
Well, what was the trespass part? What property did they say you were illegally on?
They said I was on the National Arts Center. I had been on the sidewalk, and then I was walking across the crosswalk when they arrested me.
You know, I don't know the rules in this city, but I studied the trespass laws in Toronto very carefully when some cops were trying to keep us off the plaza in front of City Hall. And at least in Toronto, the laws for trespassing someone off of public property, off of parks and things like that, is extremely strict, as in you have to be physically harassing someone, drunk or something like that, before you can be kicked off public property. You're on private property. The owner says, get out. He doesn't need any reason. You're off. But from a park, from a plaza, at least in Toronto, it's very hard to have cops evict you. Is James Kitchen helping you on this case also?
Well, so it was actually about 2 weeks afterwards, the police contacted, I think they actually contacted my dad, and they said they apologized and said it was a mistake.
They apologized?
They saed they didn't mean to arrest me for trespassing.
It was an accident. These things can happen to anyone. They accidentally arrest when they didn't mean to.
It was just a coincidence that Global News and CTV were all standing there filming it.
They apologized. Was this just verbally, or did they put that in writing?
No, they didn't put it in writing. They never do.
Getting an apology from the police, that's rare, I should tell you.
Yeah. Well, they know I'm already considering suing them, and they wrongfully arrested me, wrongfully charged me. They made a public scene about it, and then apologized quietly over the phone. Not even to me personally. They apologized to my dad.
Well, it's probably better that they talk to your dad. I mean, it would be weird for police to call a minor directly and have a chat with him. There's a lot of weirdness here. All right, so what are you doing for school next year?
That's a good question. At this point, I'm kicked out. There's certain conditions they want me to agree to that I refuse to agree to, and at this point, I don't have any form of education.
There's an old saying, someone asks you a question that the answer is so obviously yes. You say, is the Pope Catholic? I don't know if you've ever heard that turn of phrase, like, Ezra, are you hungry? Is the Pope Catholic? Like it's a generic way of saying, of course, it's in my nature. But for a young man to be kicked out of and given a trespass notice out of a Catholic school, is the Pope Catholic, is a real question. Yeah. Or at least with, what's it called, St. Joe's? What's the name of your school?
St. Joseph's Catholic High in Renfrew.
Very strange days we're in. There was one moment in the morning session here where someone noted that a whole bunch of conservative candidates were asked, can you define the word woman? And every one of them refused to. And that's in the Conservative Party. And I think that this issue went from absurd thought experiment to fascist authoritarianism faster than anything I've ever seen. And it'll be interesting to watch your case. And I wish you good luck. And I think you're in good hands with the lawyer you have. and we'll see where you wind up. Hopefully you get that high school diploma. That was an excerpt from the Ezra Levant Show. I'm Ezra Levant. Every weekday, I do a monologue about the topic of the day. Then I interview a fascinating guest either in studio or via Skype. And then I read your mail, whether it's fan mail or hate mail, which is sometimes even more interesting. This is on our premium service, though, called Rebel News Plus. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. It's $8 a month or less if you buy a whole year in advance. You get my show every weeknight, plus Sheila Gunn Reid's show every week. It's called The Gun Show. It's pretty amazing. You know, we rely on you because we do not take a dime from the government. In Canada, that makes us almost unique. So please help us out and help yourself to some great journalism at rebelnewsplus.com.